Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Some of the heat and acrimony around the emergence of Uber as a disruption in the way we access and use transportation, taxis, has somewhat diminished, but the principle of disorder in the status quo is clear. Welcome again to the most widely watched source of Carolina business and public policy. I am Chris William, and the creative destruction of so many industries and processes that we depend on is ongoing, not the least of which is publishing and branding. We are now in this new world of reality of virtual, real-time blogging, friending, liking, posting, everything. What about that? We will begin our panel of experts now.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Lindsay Bierman, Chancellor of the UNC School of the Arts, Jim Mountjoy, Director of iCreative Lab, Boone Oakley, and Henry Clay, Publisher of Columbia Metropolitan Magazine. Now, here's Chris William.
Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Happy New Year. For better or for worse, Henry, whether it's fair or not, I'm going to start with you because you're the slick Columbia Mag. I'm going to start with you. Is print dead?
Absolutely not. And the numbers out there support that print isn't dead. There are over 7,000 titles out in the U.S. right now, which is above pre-recession numbers. And over 200 magazines were launched just last year alone. So it's not dying. Magazine audience, general audience, which includes print and digital, has increased by 10% in the past year. So it's not dead. It's vibrant.
Does it? Do you lump into that the dailies like the State, the Charlotte Observer, the Raleigh News and Observer? So that
I'm talking about magazines.
Okay. All right.
I don't know about newspapers.
Yeah.
But I would assume magazines and newspapers are somewhat similar, but in many different ways they're not. I mean, they're one's a tool, so to speak. Newspaper's a tool for getting information either locally or internationally. A magazine can be that as well, but a lot of magazines are not. They're more of a luxury item that people enjoy, they identify with, and have a different perspective on that product.
So Lindsay is the recovering editor-in-chief of Southern Living. Is print dead?
Oh, absolutely not. When I was at Southern Living, we actually saw an uptick in our print circulation among, surprisingly, the 18 to 34 audience.
And this is the hard copy. This is not an e-version of some sort.
We launched a tablet edition, and that was very successful. But we found that having the tablet edition enhanced the likelihood that a consumer would renew their subscription to the print product. People loved the convenience of the tablet edition. You can easily scroll through and go through recipes when you're in the kitchen and trying to cook something. But the print product was very much something you could take to the beach, something you can drop, you can get wet, you don't have to charge it, you don't have to plug it in. And I think that was considered the ultimate luxury in 2015, 2014.
That's a good way to describe it. So Jim, what is publishing now? Is publishing Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it a blog? Is it a website? What does publishing mean when I publish something? And Lord knows anybody can publish now.
Well, with respect to these two gentlemen here, we tend to look at it more from a consumer perspective in the sense that now people have the ability to publish their own voice, to in fact publish their own brand, to publish their own stories. And with so many mediums and so many choices to utilize these days, we are all self-publishers in some respect. And what's interesting with advertisers and so forth, I want to go back to something you just asked. Print is not dead. Print is still working. Broadcast is still working. Mm-hmm. The mediums by which they are used have adapted and changed a little bit as the digital world has come up. And fundamentally, I think a lot of advertisers are still trying to find their way in that digital space to be sure that they're getting a return on their investment, a place with consumers. Mm-hmm. And they're also finding that they can share publishing with consumers and help people get their word out. So in fact, I think publishing is becoming also a forum and a platform, not just for Southern Living and not just for Columbia, but also for people to join in and share with what Southern Living stands for and what Columbia Magazine stands for.
Yeah.
You know, it used to make sense, as you described it prior, Jim, it used to make sense that it was easy to figure out what a media company was. You know, they owned radio, they owned television, and they had publications. They had dailies or they had slick mags. Now, not so much.
Yeah.
I mean, those old conglomerates, a lot of them aren't even in business anymore. So as the industry becomes fractured, again, I ask you both the question, what is publishing now? What is media now?
Publishing has a lot of different avenues these days that weren't available only a few years ago. And it's created new channels for magazine companies to engage with their audience. And that, I think, is why magazines will always be around. They'll have a print product, they'll have a digital product, and they have more opportunities. And events is another area that magazines are doing more and more in to engage their audience, which also in turn will get their advertisers to market to that audience in a more meaningful and effective way.
What would an event be?
An event would be, well, for instance, say a home and garden show put on by the Home Builders Association that the magazine is an integral, maybe a partner with.
Do you have to do, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Henry, do you have to do that now? Are events indivisible now from what your publication needs to be?
Events are, I wouldn't go so far as to say you have to do them, but they are definitely more and more important. They're an important part of our business. For sure. It's another way to go to our advertisers and say, here's a way to further enhance your message to our audience, which we're bringing to you as a conduit through either the print product, the social media, web, or events.
Lindsay?
I think events are great. A great way to build or establish brand loyalty because I think for younger consumers in particular, they want to fully experience, they want a brand experience. And so you give them a really great event. We developed a music series called Biscuits and Jam. And at one of our show houses in Nashville, our test kitchen provides the biscuits, the artist provides the jam. It's this great musical event. And we had this huge audience filling up the grounds of the Nashville show house. And you know, that's the kind of thing that starts to build a kind of brand loyalty, positive associations with their experience with the brand, and it becomes sort of a new way to actually engage with the Southern Living print product. People pick up the magazine, they subscribe to it, they start to look for different ways to engage with us.
That trinity of word, image, experience becomes so important.
Yeah.
Because not only do I read it, but I can go experience it. Not only do I see it, but I can go taste it.
Yeah.
I can go smell it, and I can go feel it. So now what happens is the very brand itself becomes dimensional.
Yeah.
And it's not something that glosses off the surface of someone's life. It's something that seats itself in people's hearts and minds. And now the brand becomes deeper and richer.
Yeah.
So does that translate, and I'm guessing for a publisher, that would translate to a better top line or top line growth?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
It creates a more involved experience.
And you see that now?
Yeah.
Henry, you see that happening now with events. You see that, if we hadn't have done this, our top line would have been X, but now we have embedded this in our brand, so now it's Y. We feel pretty good.
I mean, sure. I mean, I could quantify that if I wanted to really break it apart, but I'm seeing definitely a growth in that type of advertiser that wants to reach an audience that's engaged in an event type setting as well as print. So putting the two together really is strong.
I'm sorry to interrupt you again. Geez, I seem
right.
to be doing that to you, Henry. I don't mean to, but I think of these questions, and I know if I don't ask them, they're going to get through me. So, Lindsay, you talked about, and Jim, you just articulated pretty well, the deepening, the richness of the brand, and I don't want to get too ethereal here, but when does Southern Living or a magazine like is it Gun and Garden or Garden and Gun?
Garden and Gun.
Thank you, Garden and Gun. When do they stop being publishers and start to approach a social or media platform? When is it not a publishing, not a magazine, but it's something different, something new?
I think they're both media organizations. I mean, we went through, when I started at Southern Living, the orientation of the entire editorial staff was print. When we thought about content, we thought about it in relationship to print. How is it going to translate onto a page? By the time I left, we had become platform agnostic. So content is content, and certain kinds of content translates better on the web. Some of it is better as an event. Some of it, such as music, for example, because you want to experience live music. Some of it works well in video, so we made quite an investment in our digital studios, and some of it's just better in print. And in the case of news weeklies, they're really struggling because if people are going to go online to get all of their news, and you can't be timely if you're a weekly news magazine, you have to think about what value you can add to what everyone already knows. And so I think that a lot of them have turned to long form journalism and analysis of the news.
But that's assuming that the news weeklies, they go online and then they become news dailies or news hourlies, don't they? Wouldn't that change the DNA of what they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been the huge struggle for titles like Time or People, where they've got to drive traffic to their websites, and they've got to also drive traffic to newsstand, and to try to figure out what is the difference between what the online audience is looking for and what the print audience is looking for. And I think in the case of the news weeklies, I've never worked in a news weekly, but a lot of the conversation around that is having to do with the return of long-form journalism and news analysis, and in-depth study of the kind of in-depth study that you just aren't going to take the time to read online.
Jim?
Yeah, which is part of that is getting to the why of something.
Yeah.
Why did this occur, or why did this happen? And also to be reflective on sort of a cultural anthropology that's built into that.
Yeah.
What's happening here? And that's where the long-form journalism, I think, becomes very important in that regard, versus headline that's changing every minute, every 2 minutes, which is important. That's actually very important. So there's a balance that's occurring that some publications, whether digital or print, have to make that decision as to what is it, who are we serving, and how best to do that.
And I would like to think it's not an either-or proposition, it's both and.
Henry, do you feel the tug to have to become more of a social or media platform? Do you feel like you've got to embrace that to some degree?
We do.
And are you that?
We are, and we do. It's part of a package that we offer. It's not just print, whereas maybe only 5 years ago we were just a print product only, or event and print product only. Now we have multiple channels with web, social media, print, and events. And it's all what our advertisers are wanting too. So they want it, and we try to package it in there on a local basis, because we're very hyper local and maybe statewide to some degree, but primarily we're covering the Columbia metro market, and so we're trying to, on a smaller scale, do brand awareness and trying to get those local advertisers to enhance their brand with our audience.
And that's where if I can put the co-branding, the events, become something where there's a shared motivation and passion. And that's what a brand is. A brand is a shared motivation and passion between his audience and what he's doing, between his audience and what he's doing. So when we can figure out ways to share in that motivation and passion, and this is where it's interesting, your question about platform, not publishing, platform, is you are beginning to surround your audience with the touch points that strike them wherever they are in their life or you're meeting up with them at intersections you never dreamed of before, and it isn't just a printed page.
Yeah.
It could be an event, it can be other things. That's the difference I think we're starting to see, whether it's publishing or even branding with companies. Nike doesn't just want to sell you tennis shoes and a t-shirt. They want to make sure you're right here with them.
Yeah.
And they're going to remind you, and they're going to talk to you, and they're going to help you through that run, and you're going to discover new places on that run.
You're talking about the technology that you wear now.
That's where the technology is used to create a greater customer experience.
Yeah. I wanted to make a point about, in regards to the question of is print dead, because I think I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because if you ask advertisers or the business community, they might say print is dead. If you ask consumers, I would think they would not consider it dead. I think that the print product has been devalued by the exodus of advertisers chasing after digital products or digital results. Online banner advertising that I think has been disappointing, probably.
You don't like those pop-ups, Lindsay? You don't like that endless?
I love pop-ups. Yeah, I love pop-up videos especially. I think that if you think about the idea of print advertising having editorial value, it contributes to, or it can improve that sort of experience of reading something, and it's something that is almost soaks in, on a subliminal basis. I remember an ad campaign for air conditioning. There was a guy with the air conditioning unit standing in the New York Public Library, and I saw it for years and years. And it was so imprinted in my brain that when I was at the point where I was going to buy an air conditioning unit, that was the company I called, because I had that image in my mind. I would never click on a banner ad to buy an air conditioner.
Whether it has to do with the print or not, to the last point he just made there has to be a reason other than just the pragmatic and the useful. There has to be an emotional connection with people. Why? Because so much of what is out there is commoditized.
Yeah.
And I have to feel as though I have a connection with you in some form or manner. And that's why when we say the definition of a brand is that shared passion and motivation.
The definition of what, Tim?
Of a brand.
Of a brand.
There's a shared passion motivation that can be experienced as well as read. Let me go back to your original question. Yes, you will hear a lot of advertisers say, oh, print's dead. But what's interesting is we're still doing a lot of print in many varied forms. It's just that with the digital world standing beside us, the question isn't, well, let's run out and just do digital. The question should be asked, how does this enhance a customer experience? And what's the smartest way to do it?
Yeah.
What's the smartest way to do it that benefits the advertisers, the publication, and most of all, the customer?
Okay, so even if you're following this dialogue and you agree with it all and you nail it, and Henry, you nail it at Columbia Metro, the Columbia Metro Magazine, you still got the 900-pound gorilla. You got Amazon that wants in the space. You've got Facebook that wants in the space. I mean, these guys want to take it from you. How do you compete? How do you tactically compete with these guys?
Well, I don't think we consciously think we're competing against Amazon and Google and all the rest of those 900-pound gorillas out there. But because at the end of the day, we're all very local oriented about where we live, who we're interacting with. Google and Amazon can't come up with the stories that people want to read about local. It really puts more of a responsibility on the magazine to come up with good content, good stories that engage people. When you get that engagement, then the advertisers will heighten their brand awareness because of that engagement. And you're seeing, going back to the initial question, is print dead? There are several online entities that have just launched print products. Angie's List, Politico, Airbnb. They just launched print products to enhance their online presence. So that's just another indicator, another example of why print's not dead and how print is important to getting any kind of message and involvement from the reader.
Yeah, I'm not laughing at you, but I was thinking, Amazon, after eviscerating and slapping around Barnes & Noble and the bookstores, actually looking at opening up bookstores now, so it seems appropriate. Were you going to say something about that?
Well, I was going to say, in regards to something like Amazon or Google, I think the strength of any brand or media brand really depends on the emotional connection that it has with its audience. If you have a strong emotional bond and you know what those emotional triggers are, and advertisers can tap into that, It's going to be successful. And I don't know that in the case of Amazon or Google that they're ever going to have a strong emotional bond with there's it's going to be based on value probably, but I don't
delivery
but I don't see it as being disruptive to a Southern Living or any other kind of lifestyle brand necessarily, unless they are able to kind of find something that's going to make people really just fiercely loyal, other than low prices.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's becoming more and more of a fragmented marketplace, and there's no one entity that's going to take over, so to speak, or be the silver bullet for marketing and brand awareness. It's just become more diverse.
And we've been talking about the sales and marketing. We talk about the operational side of branding and publishing, whatever that is, but how can we forget about the editorial side? Obviously, content is still king.
Yeah.
And it seems like content at major brands, at major publishing, has gone down this road of sensationalism and tabloidism.
Yes.
So how do you not make sure, because it's what people want, I guess, but I mean, Jim, how much does tabloidism play into revenue generation and what we're going to be in our brand? And oh yeah, by the way, we want to make sure that we seem like we're highbrow and the right thing, but you've got this bent toward this sensationalism.
I think the question there becomes not so much, bear with me, not so much the audience, but what is the purpose of this publication and why are we here? And if a company begins to sway away from its deeper purpose and its deeper emotional connection as to why it started and what it serves and who it serves and how best to serve them, then it starts chasing the story du jour just to get a bump. It's not unlike, gee, we got 2% in clicks and aren't we all thrilled? Well, I got a bump, but nothing is sustaining. So I think a company has to make a decision, has to think about what is its purpose, why is it here, and be purpose-led in that. And to the point made just a moment ago, Amazon's not going to come after that. This is too regional, it's too local, and it's too beautiful. And the cultural anthropology that he is holding with his audience in Columbia is the richness in that content, and it's also the responsibility to listen to the audience and be not just beside them, but be pointing out surprises and new things that they need to know about. And that is purposeful. That's not chasing headlines. Leave that to others.
Yeah, and in all fairness, in the interest of full disclosure, it may say on the screen for you, Lindsay, but you are the Chancellor at UNC School of the Arts, but you do have quite a bit of history and DNA at Southern Living Magazine, among others. So what would you do differently now, looking back, having the benefit of hindsight, the 2020 hindsight? What would you do differently about positioning the brand of Southern Living, whatever that means? What would you do now for it?
I would have pushed for greater investment in the website in particular, in trying to find the right format for the audience that was based on what the consumer wants and based on the consumer experience versus the advertiser experience. Because I think if you can nail the consumer experience and get you would know. I mean, it's these conversations that it's all about the advertiser, and so you get these videos and pop-ups and banners, and they're incredibly irritating to consumers, and yet we design the entire site around that advertiser, and so you're competing with sites like Pinterest, which are they don't have all that clutter. It's just pictures. It's easy to navigate, and they're taking our content that we paid to produce, and they're organizing it in a beautiful way, and
aggregating it.
I mean, I've seen pictures that I produced 10 years ago all over Pinterest. So that is incredibly frustrating, and I would have fought a lot harder to really make a strong investment, put a lot more research into that.
Yeah, we've got 15 seconds. Where do you need to make your biggest investment now to that point?
Well, our biggest investment in the future, I think, is going to be what we're investing in right now, which is our print product, and making it better and better. Photography still is a huge drive for our readers, and they love it.
Okay. All right. That's got to be the final word. Henry, thank you. Good to have you here from
Thank you.
Columbia. I hope you guys are finally drying out after the 1,000-year flood. God bless you guys.
Yep, finally.
Yeah, good to see you. Jim, thanks for being on the program. Last minute, but you came. And Lindsay, always good to have you here. Best of luck in Winston-Salem.
Thank you.
Great school.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for watching our program. If you have any questions or comments, please go to carolinabusinessreview.org. Make your comments. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care, when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.